into your world with papers in my hand. A contract, a transaction, nothing more was planned. Brown eyes met black, and something shifted there. A stranger in my mansion, blonde curls and gentle care. I built my life on logic, on walls I couldn't break. A marriage made of compromise, a love I couldn't fake. Then you carried hope inside you, grew life beneath your heart. And piece by piece you showed me how to feel, how to start. I didn't know I was waiting for someone to see through me. Didn't know I was breaking until you set me free. We were broken contracts.
I stared at the contract on my mahogany desk, the words blurring together as they had 1,000 times before. 6 years. 6 years of this carefully constructed facade, and now it was crumbling around me. Thema, we need to talk about this. Ken's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp and insistent. I looked up at him, this man I'd bound myself to in every legal way except the one that mattered. He stood in the doorway of my home office, his politician's smile nowhere to be seen. Instead, his face was tight with frustration.
We've talked about this, Ken.
Multiple times. I kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I used in court when I knew I had the winning argument. My parents won't stop asking. The press is starting to notice we don't have children. It looks bad for the campaign. I leaned back in my chair, my short pixie cut falling perfectly into place as I tilted my head. Everything with you is about how it looks. That was the agreement, he shot back. I needed a wife who could hold her own in public, someone respected, intelligent. You needed. I needed a cover. I finished for him, the words tasting bitter. At 35, I thought I was being smart. A marriage of convenience with a man who knew exactly what I was and didn't care because he got what he needed too. But now, the IVF didn't work, Thema.
3 rounds.
Maybe if we just tried naturally. No. The word came out harder than I intended. That wasn't part of our deal. We'd tried once, in the beginning, when we were still attempting to make this arrangement work in every conventional way. It had been awkward, uncomfortable, and we'd both silently agreed never to speak of it again. Ken ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, destroying the perfect coif. Then what do you suggest? Because doing nothing isn't an option anymore. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed. Another case won, another client saved from a nightmare. I was Thema Matson, the lawyer prosecutors feared and defendants prayed for. In the courtroom, I was invincible. In my own life, I felt like I was drowning. There is one option, I said slowly, an idea forming. A surrogate. Ken's eyebrows shot up. A surrogate? IVF with a surrogate who would carry the child. No physical contact required from either of us, just our genetic material, and someone willing to help create the heir your family so desperately wants. I could see him processing this, weighing the political optics. That could actually work, he said finally. It shows we're trying, using modern medicine. Could even spin it as a progressive choice. Of course, he'd think about the spin first. I'll contact an agency, I said, already making mental notes. We'll need extensive screening, background checks, medical evaluations. Thema. Ken's voice was gentler now. Are you sure about this?
Was I?
I looked at him, really looked at him. We'd never loved each other, but there had been mutual respect once. Lately, even that had been fraying.
We made a commitment, I said.
Let's see it through. What I didn't say was that I was tired. Tired of pretending, tired of the empty house, tired of going to events on his arm while my heart remained locked away, safe and untouched. Maybe a child would fill some of that emptiness. Or maybe I was just fooling myself again. The agency called 3 weeks later. Ms. Matson, we have several candidates who meet your criteria, the smooth voice of the coordinator said. However, there's one in particular I think you should meet. Shada Dixon, 23, excellent health. Psychology evaluation shows emotional maturity and stability. She's a recent accounting graduate, lost her mother 6 months ago. Something in the way she said it made me pause. Send me her file. When her photo loaded on my screen, I felt something shift in my chest. Blonde curly hair pulled back in a ponytail, black eyes that seemed to see right through the camera, a face that was beautiful in an almost unfair way. She was tall, slim, with a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, like she was carrying a weight she'd learned to bear gracefully. I read through her file twice. Top of her class in accounting, but the job market had been brutal. Her mother had died from cancer, leaving Shada with medical bills and no family. She needed this as much as we did, maybe more. Set up a meeting, I told the coordinator. As soon as possible. Ken was out of town for a campaign event, so I met her alone at a quiet cafe downtown. I arrived early, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and tried to ignore the nervous energy thrumming through my veins. This was just a business meeting. I'd done thousands of them. Then she walked in. Photos didn't do her justice. She moved with an unconscious grace, her eyes scanning the cafe until they landed on me. I raised my hand slightly, and her face lit up with that same gentle smile from her picture. Ms. Matson? Her voice was warm, slightly husky. Thema, please. I stood, extending my hand. When her fingers touched mine, I felt that shift again, stronger this time. Thank you for meeting with me. Of course. She sat down across from me, folding her hands on the table. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous. Her honesty disarmed me. So am I admitted. This isn't exactly a typical business arrangement. No, she agreed, a hint of humor in her eyes. Though I imagine you've handled much stranger cases. You'd be surprised what's considered normal in my line of work. I found myself relaxing slightly. The agency sent me your file, but I'd like to hear from you directly. Why are you interested in being a surrogate? Shada's expression grew serious. Honestly, I need the money. My mom's medical bills. I'm drowning in debt, and I haven't been able to find work in my field. She met my eyes directly. But it's not just about the money. My mom wanted to be a grandmother. She talked about it all the time, especially toward the end. I can't give her that, but maybe I can help someone else become a parent. Maybe that counts for something. The raw honesty in her words touched something in me I'd thought I'd locked away years ago. I'm sorry about your mother, I said quietly. Thank you. She blinked rapidly, clearly fighting tears. Sorry, I promised myself I wouldn't cry. Don't apologize. Grief doesn't follow a timeline. I knew that too well. My own mother had passed when I was in law school, and sometimes the loss still hit me unexpectedly. We talked for 2 hours. I explained the arrangement, that she'd live with us during the pregnancy, that we'd cover all medical expenses plus her fee, that we'd ensure she had the best care available. I didn't mention that my marriage was a sham, that Ken and I barely spoke outside of public appearances. Some things weren't relevant to the contract. But as I watched her smile, watched the way she gestured when she got excited talking about her love of numbers and spreadsheets, watched the compassion in her eyes when she asked about my work, I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. Because already, after just 2 hours, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The IVF procedure was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Ken flew back for it, playing the attentive husband role perfectly for the medical staff. Shada was calm throughout the whole process, asking intelligent questions, making jokes to ease the tension.
You have reached this point. Please subscribe for more. Thank you.
I held her hand during the implantation. I told myself it was just to be supportive, that it meant nothing. But when she squeezed my fingers and gave me that gentle smile, I knew I was lying to myself. We'll know in about 2 weeks if it took, the doctor said. In the meantime, Shada, take it easy. No strenuous activity, plenty of rest. I'll make sure she follows orders, I said before I could stop myself. Ken shot me a look I couldn't quite read. 2 days after the procedure, Ken collapsed during a campaign rally. The news spread like wildfire. Heart palpitations, they said initially. Exhaustion and stress. The truth was much worse. Early-stage cancer, the oncologist said, his voice grave. And there's another condition, a rare, degenerative disease. Treatable, not contagious, but Mr. Matson's prognosis is limited. Limited. Such a clinical word for what amounted to a death sentence. Ken took it better than I expected. He'd always been good in a crisis, able to compartmentalize and strategize. Within hours, he had a plan for how to manage the public narrative, how to handle the campaign. I'm not dropping out, he said firmly. I'll fight this just like I'll fight for this state. I wanted to admire his courage, but all I felt was a distant sort of sadness. This man who I'd shared 6 years of my life with was dying, and I couldn't summon more than that.
What kind of person did that make me?
The positive pregnancy test came a week later. Shada called me at the office, her voice shaking with emotion. It worked. Thema, it worked. I sat down heavily in my chair, the phone pressed to my ear. That's wonderful news. Are you okay? You don't sound happy. How could I explain that I was happy, terrified, guilty, and confused all at once? That the thought of her carrying our child filled me with a fierce protective instinct that had nothing to do with the baby and everything to do with her? I'm just processing, I said. This is good news, Shada. Really good news. How are you feeling? Excited. Scared. A little nauseous, but the doctor said that's normal.
She paused.
Have you told Ken?
Ken, right.
The father. The dying man I was still legally married to. I'll tell him when he gets home tonight. I promised. He took the news with a tired smile. At least something good came from all this, he said, and I heard the unspoken ending. Before I die,